past, where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to robot facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where we challenge the dairy industry's most comfortable assumptions with data that demands action. Today's episode is going to make a lot of Western dairy professionals extremely uncomfortable, and that's exactly the point. On this World Milk Day 2025, while our industry celebrates robotic milkers and mega-dairy efficiency, I'm about to expose a dirty secret that should fundamentally change how you think about scale, technology, and competitive advantage. India, yes, India, with its millions of farmers averaging just 2 to 3 cows each, has quietly captured 31% of global milk production while achieving 6% annual growth. Meanwhile, European dairy faces decline. U.S. growth stagnates at 0.7%, and replacement heifer numbers hit 47-year lows. Here's what should really keep you up at night. Indian cooperatives return 70-80% of consumer prices directly to farmers, compared to our pathetic 33% global average. Their distributed model provides free doorstep AI services to 88.7 million animals, while we're asking farmers to invest $200,000 per robotic milker. The evidence is overwhelming, the implications are massive, and the blueprint for change is already written. So buckle up. Your assumptions about what makes dairy successful are about to get shattered by mathematics you can't argue with.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. We're looking into something today that really pushes back on some core ideas we often have in the dairy world about success. We're doing a deep dive using a really fascinating analysis from a Bullvine article.
Yeah, our mission today is simple. Grab the key insights from this article. You can find it at www.thebullvine.com and pull out what really matters. The idea is to help you see global dairy trends and maybe, just maybe, think a bit differently about your own operation.
Absolutely. And the central idea here, the one that might make you sort of tilt your head, is this. You know, Western dairy, we're often focused on massive scale, high-tech, expensive stuff. But then you look at India. Millions of farms, tiny ones, maybe 2-3 cows on average, and somehow they've become the world's biggest milk producer. So the analysis asks, how does that work? And maybe more importantly for you listening, what does it actually mean for your farm right here, right now? Right. It seems completely backward compared to what we usually hear about efficiency, doesn't it?
They're right.
So this Bullvine analysis, the first big thing it tackles is that idea, that assumption that bigger is always better. It suggests maybe that's, well, a myth if you look at it through the lens of resilience.
Exactly. And the numbers they present are pretty stark when you put them side by side. You've got India, 80 million farmers in dairy, average herd size, like we said, 2-3 cows. It's tiny. Then compare that to the U.S., fewer than 40,000 farms total now, and many are these huge operations, thousands of cows, yet India is churning out 31% of the world's milk. It's a completely different kind of scale, you know?
And I love the analogy in the article. It paints Western dairy like a Formula One car, super powerful, high-tech, very high maintenance. But if one thing goes wrong, bam, it's out of the race. India's model, more like a massive fleet of dependable pickup trucks. Maybe not as flashy individually, but together they haul a lot, they're cheaper to run, and if one breaks down, the rest just keep on going. So the question becomes, which one is actually more resilient when things get rough?
Which ties right into this concept they discuss antifragile resilience. It explains how India's system, being so spread out, is just inherently better at handling shocks. Risk is distributed across millions of tiny units. Think about it. A disease outbreak hits one small farm, it's contained. It's sad for that farmer, but the system barely notices. Contrast that with a mega-dairy. Losing one herd could mean losing, say, 5,000 cows. One catastrophic event. The analysis compares that to maybe losing 500 separate 10-cow farms scattered around. The impact, the ability to recover, it's fundamentally different.
Okay, that totally reframes how you think about scale. But what about the economics? Does this small-scale model actually work financially? The bovine analysis argues, yeah, it does. And it kind of demolishes the idea that you need that corporate scale to compete and get farmers paid well.
It really does. It points to the Anand pattern cooperative system, and this isn't new. It's been around since the 1940s. It's got 3 tiers. You have the village level, almost 186,000 of these societies, doing collection, basic quality checks, vet stuff, feed. Then district unions, about 222 of them, handling processing and marketing, and then state federations, 28 of them, for the bigger picture distribution and branding. But the key thing, the absolute linchpin, is that it's genuinely farmer-owned and farmer-controlled all the way up.
And this is where, according to the analysis, it gets really interesting for the farmer's wallet.
Yeah.
The milk check. These Indian co-ops, they're set up to return, get this, 70 to 80% of the final price the consumer pays directly back to the farmer.
70 to 80%.
Yeah. Now, compare that to what the analysis states is the Western average, often around just 33%.
It's more than double the share going back to the farm gate. It's a massive difference.
So why? What's the reason for that huge gap?
Well, the analysis lays it out pretty clearly. In more corporate supply chains, the value tends to get captured further up the chain, processors, marketers, retailers. That tends to squeeze the farmer's margin right at the bottom. But the cooperative structure, because it's governed by farmers, for farmers, its whole purpose is different. It's designed, as the article puts it, to be sensitive to the needs of farmers and responsive to their demands. Farmer prosperity is the goal, not just maximizing profits somewhere else in the chain.
And you can see that impact on the ground. The analysis mentions over 122,000 Lakpati Didises. That means women earning over $1,200 a year specifically through these dairy co-ops. That's real socioeconomic change happening.
And, there's actually data to back this up. It's not just anecdotal. The analysis mentions a study in Tamil Nadu looking at these farmer-producer organizations, or FPOs. It found a really strong link between things like how cohesive the group was, how well they made decisions together, and the overall success of the FPO. Those internal factors explain something like 61.9% of why some FPOs performed better than others. So it suggests this cooperative success isn't just luck. It's something you can systematically build.
Okay, so we've looked at scale, resilience, economics. What about technology? That's another big Western assumption, right? That you need huge amounts of capital on your farm to access the latest tech. This analysis challenges that too.
Precisely. We often celebrate the farm that buys the $200,000 robot, and that's great for them, but India's taken a very different path, especially with genetics. It's described as more democratic. They have this nationwide artificial insemination program.
Democratic, how so? What does that mean in practice?
It means they deliver AI services, free of charge, right to the farmer's doorstep, across hundreds of districts, 605, I think it said. And the scale is huge. They're producing over 10 million doses of sex-sorted semen a year. And here's the kicker. Farmers get a big subsidy. It brings the cost down to maybe $8.90 per dose right there at the farm. Now think about typical AI costs in the West, $35, maybe $50 a unit, or the cost of sophisticated on-farm genomic tech. It's a world of difference in accessibility.
And they have people to actually deliver it, right? These MI3Is.
Exactly. The multi-purpose AI technicians in rural India, they get small grants, around $575 for equipment, and they're the ones bringing these inputs, this advanced tech, right to the smallest farms. It's all about making it widespread and low cost, not forcing individuals into massive debt for tech adoption.
And what's really fascinating is how this lines up with the big shift happening here, the component revolution the article talks about.
Yeah, it's perfect timing almost. The analysis shares data showing U.S. butterfat going from, 3.95% in 2020, projected up to 4.36% by 2025. And protein climbing, too, from about 3.18% to 3.38%. Your milk check is increasingly tied to these components because of how the FMMOs are structured now.
Right. So while farmers here might be struggling with the high cost of genetics needed to boost those components, or may be facing limited choices due to, as the article hints, possible monopolies, India's system has basically given its farmers, even the smallest ones, widespread access to the varied genetics needed to hit those component targets and capture those premiums. It's like democratized access.
Which loops right back around to you listening. Okay, given this completely different successful model in India, what does it actually mean for your strategic planning? For 2025, for beyond? The analysis basically argues that sticking rigidly to some of our Western assumptions might actually be creating vulnerabilities for us.
Yeah, but thankfully it doesn't just leave us there. The analysis offers what it calls an implementation roadmap for Western adoption. Practical stuff. It breaks it down into things you could actually look at doing, pretty quickly. like in the next 6 months.
Right. And the first immediate action suggested forming producer cooperatives, but focused specifically on managing costs to start. It makes the point you don't have to leap into building a processing plant tomorrow. Start simpler. Collective purchasing. Think about feed, vet supplies, maybe energy contracts. Why? Because the data shows 80% of dairy leaders say cost management is a top priority. And even just basic cooperation on buying inputs can shave off 5, maybe 10% in costs. That goes straight to your bottom line.
Okay, that makes sense. Start small, focus on costs. What's action number 2?
Pilot shared technology access.
Instead of everyone needing their own expensive gadget.
Exactly. Does every farm on the block need that $200,000 piece of kit? Maybe not. Could a group of you, maybe neighbors, invest together in mobile milk testing? Or share the cost of a really good genetics advisor? Or access some precision tech collectively? It just lowers that huge capital barrier for individual farms dramatically.
Got it. And the third immediate action?
Double down on capitalizing on this component revolution. We just talked about it. The analysis points to real growth in domestic demand for products that need high components. Natural cheese up 1.5%, butter 5.8%, yogurt 6%, cottage cheese a whopping 12%.
Wow, cottage cheese comeback.
Right. So these products need component-rich milk. The advice is actively focus your genetics program, your nutrition program, right now on pushing butterfat towards that 4.36%, protein towards 3.38%. Position yourself to be the supplier that these growing markets need.
Okay, immediate actions. Co-op purchasing, shared tech, focus on components. What about longer term? The analysis mentions medium-term shifts too.
It does. One big one is seriously looking at investing in cooperative processing down the line, building farmer-owned facilities. Why? To capture more of that final consumer dollar yourself, especially in value-added products where the real margin often is, keep more money closer to the farm.
And advocating for change too, right?
Yes, advocating for more democratic technology access, supporting initiatives, maybe government-backed, maybe industry-led, that provides subsidized access to things like AI, precision farming tools, data systems, treating them more like essential infrastructure available to more producers, similar to the Indian model, rather than purely individual investments.
And underlying all that, the analysis suggests a fundamental shift in how we even think about efficiency. Moving beyond just, pounds of milk per cow on my farm to thinking about the efficiency and health of the whole system. That includes resilience for everyone, broader prosperity across more farms, and making sure innovation is accessible, not just locked up for those with the deepest pockets.
And connecting these dots globally. The analysis brings up an interesting point about food security versus export vulnerability. India's massive production, it's mostly for their own huge domestic market. That gives them a strategic cushion, makes them less vulnerable to, say, sudden shifts in global trade policy or tariffs.
That's a good point.
So the question for Western dairy, implied in the analysis, is, are you building strong, resilient domestic markets? Or are you potentially too exposed to global volatility you can't control?
And that links right back to something happening now. That $8 billion the analysis mentions being invested in U.S. processing infrastructure. A lot of that new capacity is specifically designed for cheese, butter, yogurt, those high component products.
Exactly, which creates a massive immediate strategic opportunity for you. If you focus on producing that component-rich milk, you become a crucial sought-after supplier for this new domestic demand that's literally being built right now.
It's about producing the right kind of milk for where the market is going.
And the analysis doesn't just speculate. It points to verifiable ROI estimates for adopting these cooperative approaches. Things like potential 10-15% bumps in your milk price through collective marketing or processing, another 5-10% saved on input costs via group buying, plus needing less individual capital because you're sharing resources and just generally building a more resilient business. The numbers suggest these models really do work for farmers.
Okay, so let's try and wrap up the key takeaways from this really thought-provoking bovine analysis. First, that whole bigger is always better idea. It gets seriously challenged by the sheer resilience of India's distributed small farm model, anti-fragility in action.
Definitely. Second, the cooperative model. It's not just some feel-good alternative. It's shown to be a powerful way to return significantly more of the consumer's money back to the actual producer, the farmer.
Yeah, that 70-80% figure is stunning. And third, democratic access to technology. It's not just about fairness. It's a strategic advantage, positioning farmers to capture value from market shifts, like this component revolution.
And importantly, the analysis gives you concrete starting points, immediate actions you can genuinely consider. Explore cooperative purchasing. Talk to your neighbors about feed or supplies. Look into piloting some shared technology, maybe mobile testing, maybe AI access, and absolutely strategically focus your breeding and feeding on boosting those milk components now to meet that growing domestic demand.
The analysis also leaves you with some tough but important questions to ask yourself. Are you optimizing just for volume right now, or are you strategically targeting components? Could group purchasing actually save you real money starting next month? What's your plan if current market pressures get even tighter? And are you actively talking to or positioning yourself for that new processing capacity that needs high component milk?
And maybe the final thought to chew on right from the article's conclusion, looking ahead to, say, World Milk Day 2026. Will Western dairy have been proactive? Will it have challenged its own assumptions and adapted fast enough to shape its own future? Or will market forces, the kind illuminated by looking at India's success, end up making those choices for you? The analysis suggests that a blueprint for a different kind of success may be more resilient, maybe more profitable for more farmers, isn't just theory. It's already out there, working village by village. Something to think about.
So there you have it. The uncomfortable truth about Western dairy's complacency exposed by India's cooperative revolution. The numbers don't lie. 6% growth versus stagnation, 70-80% farmer returns versus 33%, resilient distributed networks versus vulnerable mega-operations. The question isn't whether India's model works, it's whether you'll have the courage to challenge your assumptions before market forces do it for you. Here's your homework. This week, reach out to 3 neighboring farmers and start a conversation about collective purchasing. Research cooperative structures in your region. Question whether that next $200,000 technology investment could be better spent on shared community assets. India's dairy revolution proves that the future belongs to systems that empower farmers, democratize technology, and build antifragile resilience. Your choice is simple: adapt or become irrelevant. Thanks for listening to the Bullvine Podcast, as we remind you that the most dangerous phrase in agriculture is, "That's how we've always done it." Visit thebullvine.com for the full article, implementation guides, and more industry-challenging insights. Until next time, question everything, especially your own comfortable assumptions.